The second thing I'm going to be looking for is rate of improvement. So this one really is, I would argue, probably the biggest variable we're looking for in this newest software from Tesla for FSD V12. Rate of improvement. Why is this so important? In the past, before version 12, Tesla's software is what's called using human-like code. So they've had to write in a lot of situations where they're saying, hey, this is a stop sign, stop for the stop sign. This is a traffic light, stop for the traffic light. And so what that introduces is that you now have to account for every single variation or permutation that exists in the real world, and somebody has to literally code that into the software. Somebody has to say, if I'm in the right lane and there's a dude on a bike that's about to approach that might, get into my path, but I have a green light and there's this car right next to me doing something weird, somebody has to account for all of those roughly. With version 12, all you have to do is just give it the data. You just have to give it the video and then of, cars being in those situations. And then the AI computer will just figure out how to handle that situation. It's basically like offloading the amount of work somebody has to do to code self-driving, and you're offloading that work onto an artificial intelligence brain. And so from that standpoint, theoretically, there should be no artificial limit, meaning that there should be nothing that is keeping you from completing self-driving unless you have some form of limitation from, say, hardware, right? Maybe you're missing a camera. Maybe your computer is not fast enough. Maybe your camera resolution is not good enough. Things like that. So in theory, the rate of improvement for the software, the thing I'm going to really be looking for is how much better is version 12.9 versus version 12.1, which is the version that's out there right now. This will tell me if Tesla has finally figured out, if they finally got into a point where they're saying, hey, we feel very comfortable with this. This is clearly going to work. We should see super rapid improvement month to month, week to week, year to year, as it pertains to the software, because all they have to do is just take the data, dump it into the computer, and the computer will just figure it out, right? That's one of the things I'm looking for. The other thing I'm looking for as well is the rate of disengagement. So a disengagement in full self-driving software basically means that, you take over the wheel, you take over the pedals because the car is doing something wrong. So I expect this, if we're really truly at the point where full self-driving version 12 is going to work, I expect this to go to essentially zero, meaning that once I download the software and I use it over time, the amount of times I have to take over should go to zero. Right now, I have to take over maybe once every, I don't know, let's call it in the city scenario, once every 50 miles to 100 miles. In a highway scenario is like once every 1,000 miles. But that should go to like zero. Right? That should go to zero, because what that implies is that now this is ready to be what would be called a level 3 or level 4 autonomous system, which means that you no longer need a human to drive the car drives itself. And for that to happen, you need zero disengagements. So for version 12, whichever iteration we get to that can do that, hopefully the first one, I expect this number to be very close to, if not zero, for thousands of miles. And that is really the key metric that says this is complete, in my opinion. So that's what I'm looking for very, 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 very hard. Now, it's kind of interesting to think about that this solution, again, for people that follow Tesla very closely, this day feels weird because the company has been saying this is going to happen for the last 6 years. It looks like it might be happening finally. This is a solution that's driven only by 8 cameras and a computer. And I just kind of conceptualize this for you, why this is such a big deal for the long-term success of this software as it pertains to Tesla specifically. And I don't want this to be any financial investment advice. I'm just talking about how I'm thinking about the company. If you take a competitor like Waymo, so this is a Waymo self-driving car. They're extremely popular in places like San Francisco and Austin. They do a phenomenal job of driving people from point A to point B fully autonomously. These guys are legitimate level 4 self-driving companies because there's no driver at the wheel. The car drives itself. But the sensor suite it needs, hopefully you can see my mouse. They have this giant thing at the top. They have these sensors on the sides. They have these things on the bumpers back here. All of these things are needed for the car to do that. And if you think about it like, okay, from a size perspective, for every single self-driving car that Waymo has to put out there, they need to come up with, say, a pallet size. So a pallet is like, one of those things, those wooden things that people put stuff, people put things on top of and they put it in a truck. They need that size of pallet that's probably going to weigh 500 to, 1,000 pounds, however much this stuff weighs. Probably not 1,000, but like, say, 250 to 500 pounds. And you need to add that many parts and weight to every single car that drives itself. If you compare that to how Tesla's approaching this, here is a picture from Eric on X. I just want to show this for scale, just the huge difference. This is the computer that's in the car, this thing right here in his hand, that processes the information the car sees. So it has one of those in the car. So it's about, call it 1.5 feet by a foot-ish. And then the car has 8 cameras. So here's one of the cameras. And here you can see a thumb right here just to show you the scale. The car has 8 of these cameras around the car that take in the data. So you have a 1.5 feet by foot computer that weighs maybe 10, 15 pounds. And you have 8 of these cameras that are no bigger than this, that weigh, an ounce. And you need 8 of those compared to this, right? So then you think about what Tesla has potentially figured out here is that instead of having to outfit every single car with 500 pounds plus of weight and giant parts, all they need to do is fill up a box that's, say, 15 inches by 15 inches with parts, and then that car can drive itself, right? And so what is the huge win there for a company like Tesla is scale. Scale becomes a gigantic advantage for a company like Tesla if version 12 is the software that has solved for self-driving. And this has been the long, the age-old question when it comes to this this dynamic with the company is scale. It's not so much can they do it, right? We have a company that has done it. We have companies that have done it. So like Waymo is doing it and they do a phenomenal job at it. Let's make sure Waymo gets the props they deserve. They do a phenomenal job with this technology. But which one's going to be easier to give to every car? This thing that weighs 500 pounds, plus it's big and it probably costs tens of thousands of dollars, or a computer that's maybe $1,000 in parts, and 8 of these cameras that are, like $10 altogether. Like, which one's going to be easier to put in every car? And this is where this becomes such a huge deal. If version 12 is the software that Tesla says it's going to be, everything is changed now. Welcome to the new world. Okay, if this is actually the case, and that's why I at the beginning of the video I said these are the 3 things I'm going to be looking for, because if those 3 things are passed, in my opinion, Tesla is now in this situation where now they have a gigantic scale advantage. They don't, the technology, how you solve for self-driving is not really that big of a deal. Like if the car can do it, and I say that in air quotes because it's obviously a huge deal, but the car driving itself is not the deal. It's the scale. It's how many cars can do this, right? If version 12 is solved, Tesla has won self-driving, because what this means is that every single car that has those 8 cameras, right? It's every single car that has these 8 cameras and it has this computer can now drive itself. And that is in the millions, y'all. That is in the millions. 2024 could be a very big deal. I'll save that thought for a little bit later. And just to layer something on top of it, let's say version 12 is the holy grail of self-driving for Tesla. Now this lays the groundwork for the bot technology that Tesla is working on, the Optimus bot. And what I'm trying to say here is that if we have data that proves that self-driving is now complete from Tesla, then the humanoid robot becomes a reality, because the humanoid robot is using the same exact foundation that Tesla is using for the self-driving car. The bot is using the same computer, the bot is using the same cameras, and the bot is using the same exact architecture that the self-driving car uses to learn how to drive. So instead of feeding a car computer a bunch of videos of the cars driving, you feed that same exact computer the videos of a human doing something, and then the human or robot learns how to do it. How it learns is a huge breakthrough here, and the scale and how cheap it is to implement in your product is even a bigger deal, because you've essentially made the rollout of this technology extremely cheap. which will make it so that a lot of people can experience this very, very quickly. This is it. This is it. All right. I'll close on this thought and then we'll do a little bit of commentary. I'm now at the point where, I'll say it straight up. If Tesla doesn't figure out how to self-drive this year, I think that they're going down the wrong path. Let me put a little bit of like conditions there. There needs to be very obvious improvements with this type of self-driving, this solution for self-driving that shows that the AI brain is the thing that's figuring it out, right? It's the thing that's actually getting us to self-drive. We need to see that the amount of data that they're collecting is usable and something that's going to work. And we need to see a critical mass of people, let's say in the tens of thousands, that get into a self-driving car from Tesla and they all collectively say, WTF, what just happened? This car drove me to a place and I didn't even think that it was a robot doing it, it was a human doing it. If that happens, right? If that happens in 2024, I think that Tesla is on the right track. If that doesn't happen in 2024, I think we need to sit down and say, what's happening? Like, what are we missing here?